Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:31 p.m. And then I'm just going to hand it right over to Andrew to start. Get the ball rolling.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Um,
1 second.
Yeah. Awesome. So we're having we're at workshop 6.1, a recently planned workshop within the last couple of weeks to go over the value engineering items that we introduced at the last meeting, but we haven't worked through. We've worked through them very thoroughly here, and we'll go through a lot of items and kind of a target number and goal for the whole projects. So just a normal introduction. I would like to thank Peter for coming today. He's from Fitzmyer & Tachi, the engineering team. So he's helping to elaborate on some of the mechanical changes that we're going to go through for the value engineering. So we're still on schedule, even with this additional meeting. We are working. We're approaching kind of 25% of construction documents. We have a 50% set going out on 8/11, potentially 8/14. And that is the next set that we're going to get estimated. So we're going to get all these numbers confirmed through that set. And so we'll have all these changes incorporated. That's not to say that all of these numbers haven't first been vetted already. We've been in contact with the estimator all for the last 2 weeks as well.
Is the estimator using contractors or just?
He has a whole host of people that he uses, so it's not just him throwing numbers at it. Yeah.
The vendors we work with too. So.
Or providing numbers.
Or providing numbers. Yeah. We call those engineering numbers because they never give us a bid number, so it's plus or minus, million, right?
So we a few people were back here just 2 days ago for the ZBA hearing, which kind of went as planned. We got a continuation of the hearing until we settle our footprints, which we think will have settled basically by the end of this meeting. I'll show you why. And then, so we have our next ZBA meeting on August 7th. And in between now and then, we'll have the town department meetings again, where we'll have another workshop in 2 weeks, where we'll kind of be back online with at the same pace. So just quickly go over what we were showing ZBA is we need a setback variance. We need 2 things. Actually, we need a special permit. Big topic of discussion is whether we needed these, but we needed 2 things. We needed a continuation of a non-conforming structure because the library is inside of a residential district, and we needed a setback variance because the building, as it stands now, is within the setbacks, mainly because of the oddly shaped site and having streets on 3 sides, which means we have 3 front yard setbacks. And so there's no way to actually sit the site within the kind of zoning code. So that's all kind of going to plan. It would have been nice to have our footprint set, but with these changes, we aren't able to do that yet. So we're going to go right into the nitty-gritty of it. We are quite happy with where we've landed here. This is not where we landed. This is where we landed 2 weeks ago. I think as everybody knows, I don't know what's been spread around town this round, but the the number where the DD estimate came in at was about 9.2, which was $1 million higher than the SD estimate, which in itself was higher than the concept estimate. The concept estimate was done a few years ago. So we just wanted to kind of bring to mind some of the reasons why that concept estimate and SD number, had a big difference between them. And a lot of those are kind of market conditions. And it's a kind of global scale market condition for some of these. So the escalation costs were additional because the project was, the RFP was sent out later than originally anticipated by about 6 months. And on top of that, there was, of course, unpredicted escalation too. So there was an extended schedule and additional escalation. The adoption of the specialized stretch code, as well as a recently adopted stretch code, which was adopted on the first, has had an effect and a big effect on the request for electrified HVAC system. The hazardous materials remediation has gone up from the original estimate of 100 to, or not estimate, it's kind of an assumption originally, which we thought was healthy, of 100,000. Now it's based on the work done by the Agenis was, now it's 200, I believe. And material costs increase, availability of labor, freight and storage costs, prolonged lead times. Those are all kind of market items that's we don't really have control over, unfortunately. Wish we did. We'd be in a very different industry. And then lack of guaranteed pricing, supply chain issues, guaranteed pricing. You can't really get a guaranteed pricing for more than 24 hours sometimes. So even, maybe some of the things we got estimated just a few weeks ago, those prices could have changed in the last couple of weeks. And the building increased in size as we've kind of developed the program together. So, but with that all said, we did sharpen our pencils a little bit with Peter and the vendor for and we talked to the vendor, Peter specifically, about the air handler unit and got a real number on that. And that number, the estimate number from our estimator, was quite a bit higher. So we've actually just been able to reduce the overall estimate by about $200,000. And that's just to start. So we're not counting that as value engineering. But we're, for all intents and purposes, all of the kind of minuses that you see from here on out are from this number.
What's the total for DD, the plus 25%, including all the soft costs? Like what's?
So we don't have that number,
Okay.
not really, since we don't have it, not really comfortable
Okay.
putting it up. I realized, just thinking through it today, that it's not really responsible
To
for,
put something when
especially
you
for
don't
design
have
lab to be, yeah.
Okay.
So, and that number's gonna change, just depending on moving costs and storage costs and stuff like that. So, and that number has adjusted as well from concepts to SD to DD, because we actually moved the hazardous material costs from soft costs into construction costs. So that's one number that changed the construction costs of the blue line, but didn't change the top of the gray line.
So, sorry, do those deltas are from ST to DD? Or from
The bars are concept SD and DD, but the color changes are just site improvements, MEP, FP, architectural.
But like the plus 500,000 for MEP-FP,
Oh,
is
that's
that from concept or from SD?
from SD.
From SD?
Yeah.
Just from the previous one.
I'm sorry, can you remind me again what the MEPFP is?
Mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection. So we have a laundry list of items that we've studied all of them. We've talked to the estimator about all of them and more. And the list on the left is things that we are comfortable doing and making changes to this project. And we don't think it would significantly affect the integrity of this design or what's been requested by you all and by the library staff and library engineering director. So this list on the left is that recommended list. We're going to go through all of these items to explain them more thoroughly. And then we have some other large items that we do think would affect the integrity of this project and we're not recommending. And those are the ones on the right. But as you can see, that bottom number, sorry, I jumped too quick. We're targeting a reduction of $800,000 to $850,000.
Great.
And they're based on some last minute emails that actually came in when we were driving here. There may be a bit more depending on where we land today.
And that's on top of the 200, but it's that's after the $200,000 you discovered in the air handler.
Yeah. So that puts us back on target to the SD number. So Denise, I think on some of these slides, you'll notice a empty box on them. And that's for where the camera should go. So we're getting better at planning these. So in no particular order, on the interior planning, we are looking at around $300,000 of savings to target. And some of the big changes here are we're going to go with metal shelving on the perimeter rather than like custom wood shelving. And we will probably still look at having maybe a wood surround on that, but they would be more of a product rather than something made custom in the shop. Excuse me. We have found a way to remove that bump out in the back after thoroughly playing with the plans, but it doesn't have a huge effect on the rest of the design. You'll see later. We are changing the elevator from an electric traction elevator to a hydraulic elevator. We have a short list of kind of rough pros and cons on that, but it's nothing major for this project. It would be major for larger projects. We are going to cut a small amount off of the community meeting room, about 100 to 150 square feet. And we are reducing, but not removing the double height spaces. And then some a bit smaller items, but they do add up. The book security gates, we're not going to purchase. That number is roughly like $15,000. And I've seen libraries that don't even turn them on; they just use them as a tactic.
You can get fake ones.
That's a lot of stolen paperbacks.
Right.
Yeah.
Not to mention the time to put the security on the current books that we don't have.
Yeah.
And we're also going to significantly reduce the amount of window shades. The estimator carried a kind of standard number for that per square foot, and it added up to almost $45,000. And so on the whole north side of the building, we are not going to have shades because the north side is most even light. There won't be direct sunlight, except maybe on the historic side. But we'll get into more detail about that as we continue designing it.
For the finishes, there's not going to be any kind of problem with maintenance.
No, we don't anticipate any sort of actual maintenance changes to the finishes. I mean, we're still talking wood or cork or carpet. The finish. The main finish reduction would be the wall paneling on the double height spaces and just going from a stone tile to a porcelain tile. Yeah, that's good. So.
And you were saying for the shelving that there'd be something to sort of cover it to make it look nice?
Yeah, so it wouldn't, and it won't be green either. One thing that we did study was looking at reusing those shelves and repainting them entirely, and that would also be a pretty significant savings, but we feel like that would probably be a loss to the projects ultimately. We think you'd serve new shelves at the least.
Richard.
On the previous page, there was some item storefront, something, what was that?
recall ever seeing that.
So that's kind of a product change, if you will. It's using a different glass wall than we originally were designing. So these are, not to say they're a little less permanent, but they're detachable or demountable, are used if you want to move a wall at some point in the future, whether it's 10 years or 20 years in the future. And they're slightly cheaper. And we're not saying that those walls will be moved at all, but it's a good, comfortable target for us. And we do have a significant amount of these glass walls. So rather than actually reduce the amount of those, we can change the product.
Tina, tell me why you hate the metal shelves. I just haven't heard the story.
So the reason will agree, I hope, to the metal shelves on the perimeter, they work. So like when you go into fiction, they're great. We use metal shelves for the holds, and they're drilled into the brick right now. And obviously that'll be different, but the staff really would like wooden shelves for where they work, where they process, when the materials come in, all of that. So I figured a compromise, because there's really nothing wrong with them, they're just ancient. So I figure if we can update metal shelves that aren't too expensive and that save money on the wood, then they work perfectly fine. We just didn't want to use the ones that had been in the library.
Okay, I'm just curious.
I mean, I think that I'm very impressed so far with all of the cost saving measures, but at the very least, you want when it's all done for the people who use it to go in and think it looks like a new library. And not-
Right. Yeah. And I don't think, I mean, as beautiful as it would be, we don't need custom millwork bookshelves. I mean, in the grand scheme of this project, right, we could deal with some metal shelves along the ends.
Right, and I'm sure there's ways of
some
making them
nice-
look
Yeah.
sleek.
That's a very
hard to do.
common value engineering.
Yeah. And we
Very worthwhile.
were already carrying metal shelving on all the freestanding shelving. So it's not
So
a
it'll actually
complete
match.
deviation.
Yeah.
And so we'll go into this a little more later too, but these plans are adjusted to show how we're able to remove the bump out, which was the break room, and move that to the second floor. And
So you do have a pointer on there.
yeah, but it
People at
doesn't
home
show
will
up
be
on
able
the
to see.
TV, so it shows up next to it.
Just don't touch it. Don't touch it, because Ben did that the other night.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to turn off the light.
Okay. So this bump out, which is on the lower level, we're moving the break room into the second floor. And another change that we had to make is we have to have a bigger elevator machine room for the hydraulic elevator, bit of back of house stuff. But to get that all to fit, we just flipped the elevator and the stairs. And then that all kind of just like fit into place like puzzle pieces. It was quite relieving. Then we have a bigger opening here. So rather than having two kind of 4 to 5 foot openings, we have 1 8 to 10 foot between the building. And we still have some double height spaces, but they're slightly smaller. We're gonna work to see if we can make them bigger, but we need to lay out the children's room a bit more. And you can see kind of the footprint of the building with the removed area off the edge off that back wall.
Does that mean the patio will be bigger for the community rooms?
Exactly. Bigger or the same size. But it does have to move. It will still be directly adjacent to that. So we might start to think about how the room and that outdoor space actually merge a bit more. So maybe that material in the community room is a bit closer to the courtyards now that we lost a little bit of space in that community room. So just quickly to go over hydraulic versus traction elevator. For this project, again, there's really not that much difference. A hydraulic elevator is a little louder and it's a little slower. But in terms of speed, We're really going up one level, and it's one small level. So speed is not a big deal for us, and it will still be rather quick compared to what's currently there. And the elevator machine room does have to be slightly larger, slightly different dimensions. And we need an oil separator, which is just kind of part of the mechanical requirements of this. But we do save a pretty significant amount, $40,000, about actually a bit more than that, 41,000.
Denise, you had an objection to the height. Well, you mentioned there's a problem. How do you feel about?
Yeah, I mean, my objection was just, when I started here 3 years ago, the elevator was down because we had a hydraulic leak and it was very expensive. Insurance covered it, but it was very expensive and it took a lot of time to repair. I don't have the same issue with a brand new elevator. I think it'll be fine. We've had no problem since it was fixed. It's just hearing the word hydraulic makes me think back to the oil spill, the oil leak we had here. So, and you can, this one, it's not loud. I mean, every once in a while I'll say, oh, someone must be in the elevator when I'm walking by, but it's not loud and it moves fine.
And the, since you still have the ramp in there, if there does have to be maintenance for whatever reason, there's still an accessible way up and down, which there's not now.
Right, and then we have the entrance to get to the second floor.
Yeah.
Directly, so if the elevator was like here, you have no choice but to take the stairs when the elevator's down. And I moved into my office by taking the stairs and lugging everything up and down. So that's why I just haven't reacted. But the building, you have a way, an accessible way to get to either floor.
Yeah. And just a little aside, but we are able to get a very small elevator because of the arrangement of the building and having access points at all levels. Otherwise, we would actually need to accommodate a stretcher within this elevator, but we don't need to. We're sitting within 2 exceptions within the code, which is nice.
That's great.
What's the, what's different in maintenance on the different elevator types?
I unfortunately don't know off the top of my head, but we can talk to the elevator consultant about it. For landscape, we looked at some pretty drastic measures for landscape, and we're not proposing those. And that those drastic measures were basically getting rid of the historic entrance and not having steps and not having that ramp up there. It was really good savings, but we're not proposing that. What we are proposing is changing the brick wall that kind of surrounds the courtyards to be a prefabricated stone wall. We've actually gotten recommendations to use this product before. It's really nice. It's not like it's not like a cheap version of it. It's just that they put the stone within the concrete off-site rather than doing it on-site. And that way they can do it within the factory and really quickly, and there's kind of an economies of scale factor.
So it's real stone.
It's real stone.
Assembled someplace else.
Yeah.
It's a PLS system.
Yeah, it's a panel system. Yeah.
Look nice.
So, yeah, it looks just like a stone, and you don't see the seams or anything. So, we'll also be looking at changing the pavers from concrete plank pavers to brick plank pavers, which still fits within the overall language of the building, because we do have a brick building still. And then also, we'll be reducing the initial size of the plants. So going from like a 10-gallon to a 7-gallon plant, still the same plant, and it will still grow to be the same size. It will just start a little smaller. And all of that adds up to a little over $100,000.
Question about the pavers. Is there a difference in their durability for salt and snow and scraping and all the fun parts of winter?
Brick and concrete are both very sturdy materials, so I don't anticipate there being a significant loss, or I mean, there could even be a gain. But I'm not entirely sure. I can talk to the landscape architects about it.
Okay. And does it change? Is it brick colored, or could it be like? Is it going to change the color palette that has been discussed?
We have the same palette choices of like around 1 million colors for
That's not enough.
for the building. So yeah, we'll be coordinating all of that with the landscape architects and as well as taking their recommendations. And all of that, all of the like stone wall stuff also kind of feeds into changes that would happen on the staircase as well. So we were carrying like granite sheet walls that would probably adjust rather than being a single piece of granite, maybe a concrete with granite veneer, or it would match with the stone walls, something like that. And then some what may feel like major architectural changes depending on how you look at them, but we don't think they are. So we're going to make the roof levels the same. So we actually had 3 different roof levels, which adds, like, then you have some little columns and some little beams to like make that little step up and stuff. So we're going to even that out, and we're also still trying to figure out how to explain this the best, but we are going to, rather than having the fully sloped roof, we're going to have the slate still slope as it was, but there won't be a top on it. And we'll use that, what I've been calling a large parapet, to hide the mechanical equipment. So you might remember that this roof used to go up like this and back down. And so now we're just going to have it go up on the fronts, on the sides, and then it will cut back down to the same level as the others. So then on the inside, we can just build this all with kind of flat steel beams or wood beams, actually.
But it's still a slanted roof,
So
or there is a part that's
slate
flat.
will still be slanted, and it will still have the kind of unique points on it. But there won't be as much of a top to it. But this view here will not change.
It's like
So
a
it's at the
slanted
side,
facade,
really?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm only
Wait,
asking because I.
All the
live in a
way
place-
around, like that?
Yeah.
Okay, but we won't be able to see behind it where there's nothing. That's
Yeah, you won't be able to
Most
see
of
it.
that, most people won't realize.
Yeah.
The
I
Boston
put my
Public
drone up
Library,
there.
the Boston Public Library is like that.
Is it?
Yeah, it's clay tiles and goes up.
Yeah,
It's off, and it's not clay
Okay.
tile all the way over.
Is there any concern about the flat roof and snow collection or drainage or weight? I live in a house with a flat roof and.
Well, we'll be designing to all of that. That's,
Okay,
it's,
okay.
yeah, no, there's no concern. It's just a part of the design
Yeah,
process.
okay.
So, and then we'll hand it off to Peter for a moment.
So we looked at multiple different options, everything from reducing the type of unit we were using, trying to take advantage of the larger roof area. The previous design was a little broken up for a couple of reasons, and one of them was trying to fit and hide the equipment up on a roof. And that forces to split the different components. The one option that we did look at was to try to save the existing concepts that we had by going to a piece of equipment that was a package. So you didn't have a condensing unit, and you came all together, and it's much easier and cheaper to bring it on the roof. And it was a manufacturer that is more in the middle of the road instead of the semi-custom that we were originally starting with. And that resulted in a savings of about $50,000 above and beyond where we were to reduce costs of the 200,000, right? So that was, so we were starting at the 700,000 mark.
Yeah.
So anyways, it was a reduction and additional reduction. One of the difficulties that we're having across the board, and it's not just unique here, it's going to be across every Massachusetts job that's adopted the stretch code, is that manufacturers have not caught up with the new codes. So there's a lot of manufacturers producing equipment that does not meet the current efficiencies of the system. So, when we look about costs and we look at what's going to happen as during bid, you're very limited as to some of the manufacturing that can meet the codes. And again, that's one of the reasons why the cost is going up. And as we know, as talked the first time we met a couple months ago, we look at these type of projects that are going to be here for 50 or plus 100 years. And it was kind of fitting. I heard a story the other day in the news that some filed an overdue book for a library to sell. Should you hear that? It was 119 years overdue.
It was mechanical engineering. It was electrical
Which
engineering.
was-
Yeah.
Don't blame me. It was the other guys. But it just kind of goes to show you that, you know, building, something was built 100 and some odd years ago is still in existence and being used today. So when we think of systems, we want to think about 15, 25, 30, 35 years. Because we know this building's going to be here, hopefully another 50 and then some. And so all the original concepts were keeping that in mind for ease and longevity. But those all come with a cost. And you know, we looked at the first option, the savings. And then we said, let's throw this all out, and we know what we don't want to do, but where are we on cost and how much money? What is like the down and dirty system we can give you guys that will function and cool and heat the building? You probably won't like me when it's all said and done in a few years from now, but we're not taking that. So, but that resulted in a $250,000 to $300,000 savings. And we just took that to the extreme, but again, we don't recommend it. A lot of Andrew's comments about the things we could do. We don't recommend it because it's a cheap system. It doesn't give you a lot of zone control. You wouldn't be able to have variation in temperatures from one room to the next. It's basically the first floor is one zone, the second floor is another zone. And you get a lot of glass, the room's gonna be warm. So we said no to that. We don't think that that's the right option.
But just to make it clear, that would be like a gas-fired boiler heating the building. Very traditional system.
So one of the other more popular items or options for design was a VRF system. I think everybody, you know, heat pumps, and they're very popular in a lot of buildings. And the good and bad of that system is you do have individual zone control in the rooms. We can set it up as the larger rooms will have, you know, two, if you see the picture in the middle onto the right, the ceiling cassette units. Those have the little coils in there and a little fan, and those will provide the hot air or cold air into the room. Those are coupled to an outside condensing unit, which is the lower middle picture right there. And it's a typical Mitsubishi split system. To meet the code and to meet the ventilation requirements, we also have to provide an energy recovery device, which will bring ventilation air into the building. One of the issues we're having, and we're probably not going to meet the code, the more intensive stretch code. There's one manufacturer on the market right now that we're dealing with that can provide that equipment that'll meet the code. We're not going to sole source. And so something we'll have to think about. But when I'm saying that, and apologize, I'm talking engineering, is, you know, it's like 87% efficient. We can get equipment from multiple manufacturers at 85% or 83% equipment. That small percentage of efficiency does not warrant a sole source product. And you know, we want to be competitive, which is going to drive the pricing down. So we will, once we get to that phase, we'll have to see how we can overcome that issue. And
just to reiterate, sole source, one available manufacturer essentially, thereby limiting the competitive.
there is no competitive, right?
Yeah,
It's-
just for everyone's sake, yeah.
And when you go to bid, we a lot of times don't list manufacturers and state values, we give a performance. And by listing that performance, other manufacturers know they can't meet it, they're not gonna bid it. They basically, in this business, everybody knows what everybody else is doing, and they see that, and then they go, oh, that's written over Mitsubishi, or that's written by Depravay, or that's written by somebody else. They'll try to bid it, and they'll put out disclaimers.
Mhm.
But at that point, they know what their price points are, and they're not as competitive.
Mhm. And we want competition.
Yeah, we want a lot of competition on this.
And I do want to clarify, so yes, the town of Stowe has adopted the stretch code and the specialized code. We are not required to adhere to them because it's a renovation, but the town is very pro sustainability and reducing our reliance on fossil fuel. So I think the important thing for us is, I think for this project currently, it's the ability to apply for the decarbonization grant is what's sort of driving the conversation of all electric. So I don't want folks to think that we're not meeting the stretch code means we're violating our own, it doesn't apply, but we want to move in that direction, and that's the
We are
position the
doing-
board has taken,
Sorry.
the select board.
We're doing everything we can to comply with that
Yes.
within reason, and those codes do cost, there was an impact on funds.
But options, the off the shelf and the VRF would have no reliance on fossil fuels, correct? So we would be eligible to apply, even though we might not meet a
Yeah.
specialized code, we would still be reducing the fossil fuel use to allow us to apply for the potential $500,000 grant.
And I don't know if you made any progress on that number or that, but
Well, sorry, but are we reducing the fossil fuel to zero? Is probably the determining factor. I don't know. We are. go
you
ahead.
can get there. No, that VRF system, we can go one of two ways. We can go to zero and fully electric.
Mhm.
And there's the downside if there's no backup.
Right.
You're increasing your transformer size and the electric demand of the building.
Yep.
Um,
And my
And
only
so-
reason for asking that question, and you I apologize, you haven't been in previous meetings, but what we had discussed with the Green Communities rep was that successful candidates in applying for that particular grant have all been, I believe, zero fossil fuel. So I guess what we're approaching it with the mindset that if we are having any fossil fuel in the system, that we're an unlikely candidate for the grant. So
we can go one of two ways. We can go fully electric.
Yeah.
But there are downsides to that.
no, understood.
And-
Yep,
and,
yep.
well, I think you understand this, the communities understand.
Right,
that There's an implication into that. That $500,000 grant does get eaten up partially. It's not a full $500,000 back because you do have to pay for the increase in services. And that's, but money should come to offset some of that. So if you're zero, you're not gaining. But you can't, I would be very cautious of taking $500,000 off the top line and saying, hey, this is where we are.
Mhm.
Because as soon as we go electric, then we're gonna have an impact on the electric side. So that numbers that we were looking at previously will be going up.
So it's complicated.
But
Yeah. No, it's good that we got it all out.
But, yeah.
it's like two doctors talking. It's like, what did you just say?
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
You're going in the
All right, so
Um,
the downside with that one, again, it's a good system. It will serve and meet the needs and the requirements of the intent of this project. The longevity of the system, what we're seeing is about 15 years. So it's about half of what the systems were we started with. And that means, about
Does that issue about not being able to get a generator come on into play here? The inavailability of generators that we talked about?
Transformers.
Transformers at the last meeting?
I think
that's-
anything impacts the transformer at this point.
So that's not part of
This
the
is not gonna
decision?
cause that.
Okay.
It's not. I mean, the only way to really, and it's, again, we kind of throw darts at the board and we say, what kind of think outside and what could we do, and don't want to hear it, but if we went to conventional systems and full gas, then there may be an option to get some reduction in capacity and potentially reuse the transformers that are there, but that's so far away from your targeted goals that we did think about it. We did want to see what the impact was, and
Yeah, that we considered that within our office as well, but it's so far away from everything we've been building together here that we couldn't propose it.
Richard, did you have a question?
Yeah, do these calculations take into account the different amounts of time you expect these machines to last? In other words, the middle one is gonna wear out, in 3/4 of the time of the left, right? So if, stretched out, the left one is less per year, right? Because it lasts longer. So are your savings and the budget in general taking those into account, or is that a completely separate budget item you don't worry about at this point?
Ours are lump sum costs. That goes-
Right, so there would be an additional savings by the fact that something lasts longer, right?
But we still need to get a building built. So if
Yeah.
we can't get a building built because of savings, it's not gonna
Okay,
matter
I
on
see.
the annual cost. So I think for the purpose of this, they're working on what can come off the top for our construction number versus the annual maintenance, which is still a valid factor that we need to consider. But if we can't get a building built, we're not gonna have an annual
Right,
maintenance cost.
It's kind of a deferred expense.
Yeah.
You know, it's you're kicking that can down the road.
Yeah, I know, I know.
And it can go, right, it can go maybe 20 years, but like I said, a lot of
And
our
the tax
commercial
will change by
clients,
then too.
things are changing and, you know, with the code changes, who knows what's gonna be available in 15 or 20 years, maybe something even better.
I'm sure there will be. A new code. But so we are recommending the VRF heat pump system with $118,000 to $125,000 savings potentially.
And this is the one you said could be zero or could be
Yeah.
some, depending on how we go, and that's a later problem to decide.
Yeah, and we're gonna aim to go all electric. That's kind of what we've all agreed upon.
So we need, so the picture towards the top, middle, left, and left side, that's the energy recovery device that takes the air out of the building, transfers the heat from the building into the incoming airstream. And that's, we capture, instead of wasting the exhaust, we capture that heat. We do need to add some electric heating into that to bring up the temperature before we distribute that into the building. And so, again, some of the costs and the sizing of the electric gear will potentially go up on this too, so. The 125 may not be 125.
Yeah.
And can I ask, because the question came up at the zoning board meeting Monday night, is there a difference in sound output from the sound that these machines make? We have a very close abutter, and the zoning board is concerned with, even though the condensers will not be directly on their property line like they are now, they're concerned that the equipment that we're using might generate more noise than that's currently being generated. And I don't know if you can answer that, but that's something we will have to answer to the zoning board in a month.
Don't know what's being generated, so I can't give you a comparison. If you're looking at the types of systems that we had previously designed versus the VRF system, the noisiest part is the outdoor condenser units. In both cases, they would be similar between the other system and the system. They're not, and it's all relative, it's not that loud, but if you're trying to sleep with your window open at night, then it's annoying, but at that point, the building should be shut off. Right, so it's gonna be on when the building is active, and it looked like from the website that it's about 35, 40 hours a week it's on. And so if it's closed on the weekends, then there's no reason to run the system until your building gets out of temperature, which is, you know, a low set point. We typically recommend somewhere around 65 degrees on the weekend or 62 on the weekend. So if it gets that cold or beyond 85 degrees, then the system would kick on to cool it down. So you just don't want to grossly overheat your buildings. So on the weekends, you know, be sporadically running. Most of the time would just be during your normal operation. And with the Andrews behind the walls and the parapets and everything else, yeah, we'll do the best we can to reduce that sound. We'll get you some sound data.
And we have an acoustic engineer on their team as well, who we're gonna send all these cut sheets to make sure that it's not that loud. And if it is, then we'll do something about it. And that is the summary of our items where we found savings. So here's our long list of items. The two in yellow, we are probably proposing, but we don't have a number on them.
What
And
do they
they're-
say?
It's
Yeah, sorry, I know them off the top of my head, but they're substituting the underpinning for grade beams, so it's a structural design difference. It's when you build one slab that's lower than another slab next to each other, you need to support the footings of the higher slab, so you need to dig down and pour concrete under it. It's actually a rather dangerous maneuver, and due to the just the complexity of it and making sure that you get deep enough and nothing's going to collapse you, it's a slow process and somewhat laborious. But we don't have that much underpinning in this project. but we are looking at doing grade beams adjacent to the foundations rather than underpinning all of the existing foundation. But we're still studying how that's doable and what would still need to be underpinned. And then another thing that just came up on our way here from the, or we closed the loop on it on our way here, was we can probably reduce or eliminate the stormwater retention, which we presented at ZBA, if we reduce the amount of impervious paving, or really impervious to pervious ratio on site. And we just have to reduce it by 500 square feet. And so 510 square feet. And so with the bump out removed and the 100 square foot removed off of the front, we only need to find another 300 square feet from the paving in the landscape. So we could just do permeable pavers potentially, or just again cut a small amount out of that too, in order to get some probably pretty decent savings. That would be a lot of underground work that we wouldn't need to do.
Are permeable pavers more expensive? Wouldn't they be in sort of a natural to do just anyway? Or are they?
I believe they are more expensive, but we would need to look at it. But if they are, like, we would try and level it out with the pricing versus how much to actually install in order to get the savings of the stormwater retention elimination.
And Andrew, that was being proposed under the parking areas, right? Is that where the retention area was?
Yeah, so let's see if I have.
So is that included in the numbers you showed before?
It's not included in these numbers. It's hot off the press. So we're gonna look at that with the engineer or with the estimator as well, now that we have that number. But you can imagine points rather than imagining. This area here is roughly 500 square feet. So if we change some of this to permeable pavers, or touch it there, but or something with the parking potentially, or reduce the sizing, the width of the stairs, we could hit this number and reduce quite a bit of underground work, because we wouldn't need to bring all of our water. There's another code thing where you need to bring all your water to be brought back into the grounds, and we wouldn't need to do that at this point with that reduction. And so that is where we're at with the numbers. Audrey is going to go over the adjustments to the plans, which are more proof of concept, and we'll go over the next workshop more once we've developed them.
So yeah, as Andrew touched on it a little bit before, there's been a few shifts in the plan as we take out the break room and take off the end of the community meeting room. The whole historic side of the building all stays the same. There's no changes on that. The probably the biggest change, besides moving the elevator down to the workroom so that there is the more open space with the ramp and the smaller stair, there is the stair to get from the basement to the upper level. It's shifted a little bit. So instead of being a half and half, so having your having the landing basically halfway in the middle of the stairs, in order to shift it so that we can keep the entrance to the children's and keep that open lobby area. We just moved it a little bit. Same sort of configuration there. So it closes in the connection from the lobby to the circulation just a little bit. but we're still keeping that open transition there. And otherwise, yeah, we brought the break room up onto the upper level with the elevator there. And then we've got the past plan and our proposed one side by side, so you can kind of see the changes a little bit more there. But nothing crazy.
So by moving the break room in, we're losing the janitor's closet, is that right?
No, so the janitor's closet, we actually moved, so it would be inside of like the mechanical
Okay,
area.
Oh, right.
We're looking, we have to do a little bit more looking into that, to see if it can be like a storage or if it's just like more of a mop sink in that space, and we'll have the storage in other places. But we think that that'll fit in there.
So now instead of trying to juggle around this big break room, now we're just trying to juggle around this little janitor's closet, which is a lot easier for us.
Yeah.
Does that door to the children's collections still open out with that smaller space? Is the elevator so much closer to it now?
I think our intention is to still have it
Yeah,
open that way. We're still
it
working
does,
through it.
code wise, the door has to open out, it has to open into the lobby. But we're not sure which wall it will land on.
So it could move.
So it could move. That, all of this is kind of proof of concept to show that we can do it and get the break room in that location, but even that jog may be a bit different next time you see it, so that maybe we can get a double door in there. Or maybe maybe that kind of nook next to the stairs is something different. That's all we've got.
Did you consider any savings options for the exterior of the addition?
Yes, we did. It's mainly the stuff that we've actually already talked about. So changing that back volume to be a fiber cement panel and fit in with a more, excuse me, residential look. So it's actually what's replaced with clapboard and reduce the height, but that's mainly where we're seeing the savings on the exterior.
How much cheaper is that, ceramic, cement board than masonry?
That was a savings of roughly $48,000, I believe.
So using,
It's a bit less, or
28, was that one?
yeah,
26,600 to 28,000. Oh, no, sorry, the community room, 21,000 to 23,000.
yeah. So we think that number is probably a little low. And it depends on also the rest of the assembly and how we build it.
so considering the cement board for the rest of the addition is not really gonna, instead of masonry or in some combination with masonry, is not gonna bring that much savings.
It's right under there.
That's
Yeah,
the
it'd be 26 to 28,000.
But that's just for the back of the building, right?
The front would be 26 to 28. The back, we have it actually 22
Oh,
to
so-
23.
Okay, so the front, if you used cement board instead of masonry, that's what would be the
Yeah.
26, okay.
So we kind of split the difference in order to maintain the integrity of at least that, not to say it's completely lost in the back, but to maintain what we've all built with the exterior committee, to maintain that front volume, we've cut it from the back volume. And it does create two kind of separate things, which is nice.
There seem to be a few things on here
that we haven't discussed? Are we gonna, like,
Yes.
seeing like the EV charging station, are we gonna talk about those? Just because I think we're supposed to be making
So,
decisions tonight, right?
Some of these things we didn't discuss because they're, not to say they're small, but we've kind of already assumed that they would be in there. But what's highlighted here is what we're recommending. So yes, we are recommending removing the EV charging station. We are also recommending lighting reductions. That's something we didn't talk about. Something that we got estimated was installing new historic chandeliers within the historic side of the building. That number was quite large, it was $90,000. And those existing chandeliers are rather new, and they're not quite of the times, but they're fitting for the spaces. So we will be reusing those, especially for such a nice number of $90,000.
And they were paid for with the community preservation funds in the last go around, so we thought it was important to keep that aspect in the building.
I'm not entirely sure what other things we didn't go over, but, oh, another big one that we owned, but we don't feel is actually necessary at all, or maybe is 5% necessary, is refinishing all of the existing wood in the building. All of that was probably also done with the CPA funding, or it's just been kept in very good condition. We came here and looked at it recently during the abutters meeting and determined that it's in great shape. And it really doesn't need to be refinished, and that is a very, especially for the wood that's in this building, it would be very laborious. So the number here is $45,000, but that's the savings off of what was estimated, but if we were to finish it, it would probably be more than that. And then what we, some things that we aren't recommending are things like reducing the nano wall, which is that big sliding wall in the community room, especially now with the room being smaller, then we can open it up. It's more valuable than ever to open it up to the courtyard. And the savings there just weren't as big as we thought they were going to be, $6,000. That's worth keeping. The metal shelving, reusing the metal shelving and painting them, even though it's big savings, I do think it would be more hassle than it's worth, and the library deserves new shelving. Something that we talked about a lot at the last meeting was the removal of the interior ramp. This number is a little vague because it's a lot to think about when it's removed. It's like, are you removing that entire square footage of about 500 square feet? Or are you replacing that with a flat slab and moving programs in that space? So this number is $26,000, but we ultimately decided that it's a valuable part of this project, and we're not recommending.
It's only on the ground floor, so you're not really making the building smaller.
Yeah, we'd have to,
Something else.
there'd be loss on the second floor too, if we did do that. And then what we just talked about, the alternate cladding on the front, we're not recommending that either.
And then, so the septic tank, I do want to just touch on that because it is on here. We did get in touch with the Neshoba Associated Boards of Health there, reviewing our current septic system. There's some question about the current size of the tank and the size of the leaching fields in relation to the size of the building, and the math doesn't seem to add up with the current system, so they're doing some reworking of that and looking at it. Tina's provided some statistics on the number of attendees or participants to the library, which is much higher than I expected, so there is potential that we have to replace the tank. There's also potential that we would have to do something with the leaching field, so hopefully not, but we are waiting to hear from them, so that's why it's still in there for now.
And that's not impacted by the number of bathrooms that are, or is it?
It is, but it's the number of bathrooms versus the capacity, and because it's a library and because it's, it's not a 24-hour building, but the calculations are like 2,700 people a month, which is much higher, so that's like 87 people a day. So I think they will certainly have to take that into consideration when they're looking at it. But what he's explained to me is there's no category for library under this code. So he's trying to work in how library fits in with the existing code and what the requirements are. And trying to back into these numbers somehow to figure out what, what's actually reasonable. It's not just someone walking in and taking a book and walking out, like how much time are people spending that they're actually using the facility. So we talked about the number of staff, we talked about that there's really no changes to the building. He asked if we were gonna do any school programming, because that impacts it. I said no. He asked if we were moving any offices over there. We said no. So I'm hopeful that he's gonna come back with maybe just the tank needing to be increased, but at least they're actively working on it.
Yeah, no, that's good. Because are we moving from 2 bathrooms to 3, or are there three?
We're sticking, it's
We have 4
Four.
right now.
There are 4 right now. Okay.
and we're
Oh, right,
sticking with
upstairs.
4 as
Yeah.
well.
Okay.
We are adding couple sinks, but those aren't.
No, right. Okay.
Is that whole system cited under the common?
The leaching field is under the common.
Okay.
The tank is over by the parking area, the dumpster
Oh,
area.
got it.
They need access to that.
So with all of that in mind, we are able to get that number hopefully around 8.1 to 8.2 million back to the estimated SD number.
Good job.
It was a stressful couple of weeks.
I'm sure.
So we definitely don't want to vote on every item. What we were thinking is that we would vote in the recommended list and as a whole. And unless there were any, unless anybody wants to see like additional savings and wants to discuss the if necessary.
And there's another cost estimate coming, 50% CDs, right?
Yes.
So the thought was that the if necessary might be in our back pockets for that time when it comes, depending on how the estimates look. So anyway, yeah, to Andrew's point, the recommended list is what we'd be proposing committee to vote on tonight, or give Design Lab direction as they go into CDs.
Does anyone want to talk about any before I make a motion?
I guess my only question is, and maybe this is a silly one, is if we, assuming we approve all of these recommended changes tonight, if we learn more information that might change 1 or 2 of these items, we can go back and re-vote on it, right?
You mean, can they bring it back in the scope?
Yeah, like, I mean, I can't think of a good example, but like, I'll just use like even the bookshelves. If we find that we have extra money later on and we decide that we want to make nicer ones, we can go back and add that. Or if we find that there is the septic tank or something that we can adjust it if needed, or is this like final?
I'd look to the head to determine the sanctity of the vote, but
I mean, from a funding perspective, it would certainly depend on, I think certainly the bookshelves are something that could be discussed, because we're not, but anything building related.
Right, it has to be decided.
Once we make that
Right,
decision.
yeah, okay.
But I think that things like, if there's extra,
I know,
the
yeah.
miracle is extra money, yeah, we could certainly look at the EV charging stations, we could look at the bookshelves, we could look at this sort of add-on, the
Right.
shades, things that don't impact the construction. I doubt there will be.
No, I know,
but-
that was a bad example. I'm almost thinking like, actually, the HVAC system is a good one. So we're going with that middle one. That's what this vote covers. Like, if we were to learn, say that we can't get the grant unless we do something else, I think that's my concern, is if we
Well-
learn new information that impacts what we might have done, can we change things if needed? But I guess the question is, if we have to change it, we will, and otherwise we won't.
So to me, it would depend on when that decision is, because when I go to town meeting and ask for additional spending authorization, I need a number.
Right.
So yes, potentially we have between now and town meeting to make any sort of questions like, changes like that, but after that,
Okay.
we have our number.
Do we have the option of having the basis of design and then having a couple items like that as additional alternates or deduct alternates for bidding? Where they can say, give us a number for metal shelves and give us a number for wood shelves and give us a number for each of these 2 systems? Is that going to?
Is a bidding alternate, do you mean?
Yeah, good alternate. So you've got a basis of design, which is what you're asking to to vote on. And then, I mean, some of those things are easy to substitute, some of them are not.
Yeah, it's for the systems,
Systems,
We can't do
that's
that.
tough to do.
yeah,
Pick a
but
system.
for some of these other ones, actually like metal shelving. Might not be, it would get a little complicated because we would still have to design both systems. In order
Okay.
to bid
To
out
bid, not right.
an alternate, but
But are we, is the intention, I would assume that when we put out the bid for the GC, we're not doing the furniture and fixtures, that's gonna be a separate bid. So at that point, we could see if there's funding where the construction comes in. If, I mean, at that point, we could put in a metal shelving versus wood shelving, right? If we're looking at estimates on just the fixtures.
Kat said she has questions and she can't unmute.
One of the.
She hasn't raised her hand.
A minute
Sunny
ago
had
it
her
Yeah,
hand
said-
raised.
alternates, you have to take them in order.
Yeah,
And so you can't pick and choose which alternates you want. If you put alternate 1, alternate 2, alternate 3,
Oh,
and alternate 1 comes in too expensive, or you don't want it, you can't pick alternate 4 because you like that one better. You have
I
to go in
did.
order, so.
But she has to raise her.
Sounds like a
Sunny has
menu
her
of
hand raised, so
options
I
that
don't
you
know.
can
Yeah,
just
you can't
kinda-
say, hey,
right,
well,
yeah.
thank you for the pricing, but we're gonna pick number 4. It doesn't work that way.
Right. Yeah, yeah, that's a good point.
But we
Sunny, Sunny, go ahead.
Yeah, so
raise your
I think Kat's having a problem like finding the button. She's like physically raising her hand. But also, so I thought I would just mention that since I got the button. But my question I think is for Denise actually. As far as this target reduction goes, do you think that this is something that would be doable for when you go to the meeting as far as like reallocating funds, or do we need to consider more cuts, or what do you think?
So we're back to the number that I said I could comfortably, well, not comfortably, that I could cover when we had the SD estimate. So if the number was reduced by this, say, 855,000 to bring it back down to 8.2?
Yeah.
To the 8.2 million for construction, I could, if I had to, if we had no other funding sources, I could absorb that. Not easily, but I could absorb that within the budget. So I would rather not make, like, to me, the if necessary column is off the wall. Like, I don't want to touch those if necessary items unless something egregious comes back with the next cost estimate, because that to me changes what we've been talking about in this, other than maybe the septic tank, but that really changes the scope of it. So I can work with the reduced number. Obviously, if there are additional savings along the way, that's even more beneficial.
Or additional fundraising.
Or additional fundraising or grants or anything like that, obviously helps, but I could, if I had to, cover that.
Okay, great. And then the last thing that I thought of was, I think it was Morgan that brought up a frequently asked questions page a couple meetings back. And I think there's been a lot of discourse in the community about the numbers and everything that's going on with the project. So if possible, I think it would be a good time to have something that's really accessible to the average citizen, that they can just kind of look at one sheet and really understand that we are meeting the original SD price, and things are not as inflated as they may seem. So I think that would be helpful if that's something that we want to consider.
So just two things. We're not meeting the original cost. We're still much higher than what the community believes. I would caution anyone for thinking that Facebook is how the community feels. Facebook is people posting, sniping from the weeds, getting a reaction. Quite frankly, the last few people that have posted negative comments, I've personally looked them up. They didn't attend town meeting. They didn't vote in the election, let alone vote. I don't know how they voted, but they're not attending town meeting. They're not voting. They're not participating. They're just complaining. But we are working on a formal press release to put out some clarity, some specifics that's coming directly from us as to where we are in the process, why we are where we are, and what we're doing to address that. So that we are hoping to have finalized by the end of next week, once we get some of these numbers finalized, and then that can go out formally. One sort of general statement on behalf of the town, the committees, the designers, as where we are, so that we can address any misinformation or gossip that's floating around in social media.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, got that. Hi, Kat.
Hi, thank you so much for unmuting me. I'm on my phone and I cannot for the life of me find a raise hand button. So I really apologize, but thank you for bearing with me. I just had a couple of quick questions in regards to the cost savings. I just want to really say thank you, first of all. I'm sure that that was not an easy exercise to reduce the costs in all the ways that you have. So I really appreciate all of the detail that you've showed us, especially with the numbers attached. It really helps, I think, give a good sense. So thank you. Quick question. So I get a little nervous when we're reducing the square footage, only because, again, I feel like we're so tight on square footage. I get nervous about the shrinking children's room and the shrinking community room. And it looked like the cost savings for that weren't as drastic as I would have thought they would be, given the fact that you said it could be like $1,000 a square foot, but then showing the cost savings of $25,000 or whatever to reduce the size of that. So I guess I don't really quite understand that disconnect. So if you could help explain that to me. And then along those lines, I think that as a team, we really, really, really have to critically look at this plan and the square footage and how we're using it. If we're taking away, if we're making it so that the community room can only fit 20 people, that's smaller than the community room that we have in the existing library right now that's going to become quiet reading. I don't think that that's a direction we should go. I'm a little nervous about that. So I just want to see, I guess I'm also curious, some of the aesthetic things like the skylights in the roof, if taking those out gives us a big cost savings. I'm also worried about the metal. I'm just putting it all out here, but the metal shelving, I feel like that's something that we could ask for the town for down the road. Versus, if you're saving $150,000 and that allows you to build a bigger library, I would do that first and then worry about the furniture and shelving later. But that's just my perspective. I just want to put all the devil's advocate stuff out there just so that folks know kind of how I'm feeling about this, but I'm a little tenuous about reducing the square footage if the cost savings really aren't that great compared to some of these other things.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say they're not great savings. It's right now we have the reducing the size of the community room at 43,000 square feet. Or sorry, $43,000. Really digging down, which is a big number. I mean, it's one of the bigger numbers on this list. Yes,
but
we did expect that number to be a bit bigger when we were originally contemplating it. But with that also comes the change to the children's library. So in order to maintain the same square footage in the children's library, we remove some of the double height spaces, which is additional savings on that, which I think we have somewhere here, which is here listed at another $12,500. And so it does add up. But if we don't think we should be reducing the size of the building, then we can consider.
So can we
again, sorry, I just want to make sure I understand this. So, but what you're telling me is that that's only a $50,000, $50,000 to $60,000 cost savings, as opposed to just reusing the metal bookshelves would save us $150,000. Am I understanding that correct?
Because if you're changing to the perimeter, you're saving up, it's really only a $25,000 difference to go to the metal versus reusing, correct?
I believe it was an additional savings on that, but I mean, there are unknown conditions with reusing the existing bookshelves. We probably have to cut them down at certain places. We'd have to repaint them. We're not really sure what those costs would be. We'd have to store them on site. We have to protect them. So, or we install green bookshelves that are kind of representative of the old building. So that's why we think that just removing a few square feet from the building maintains more integrity than using the old bookshelves.
So what if you didn't do it as a swap? If we're saying, if we're understanding this correctly, that it's $50,000 to $60,000 that we would be saving by reducing the footprint of both the community room and the children's room. Could we just say, we don't want to save that 50,000 because we feel it's more important and we can take those out of the vote, say we approve everything else, but not the size? Is that, I mean,
But then we have to find the 50,000.
right, but we're already finding 850,000, so 800 is still pretty great in terms of cost saving right now, right? Like, but I'm devil's advocate, but I sort of agree that if we're gonna be doing the building, I don't agree with the metal shelves, but if we are gonna be doing the building and this is our one chance, then maybe 50,000 in the scheme of things might be important to keep.
To clarify, that you kept the children's library the same size.
The square
No, they
foot
were,
That was reduced as well?
by 20 square feet.
20
Yeah,
square
it's
feet.
because
But
it's
you-
above the community room.
But you recaptured some
We-
space.
we-
in the
we
double height
recaptured
space
it.
To
Yeah.
restore that space there.
Yeah,
So it's not being reduced as much as the community room.
yes.
Right.
Yeah,
The other thing to point out in this, in general terms, you get to a point on value engineering where there's not a lot more to give without radical changes. And I think we've done a good job of getting to that point where we've changed different systems and we've saved money and have not impacted the visual or the aesthetics or the fabric of the building or the MEP systems. If you start looking for another 50, 60, 70, 80,000 dollars, that there's not much more meat on the bone to give back without some radical changes. So to find another 50, and I don't want to speak for Andrew, I think it would be very difficult at this point to put 50 in and think that we could find another $50,000 in landscaping or MEP systems. It's just, it's not there. So,
For the community room, I agree with you. So the question is the reduction of the community room a radical change? And have we crossed that line is I think that's the question. And I guess in terms of capacity, how does that, I assume you've done a couple seating layouts,
it's roughly 10 people,
10 people. So what is the capacity of the reduced size?
from 40 to 30.
40 to 30. And how does it
Ish,
compare?
and that's like code based.
Yeah.
And what's the current room? Seat or fit?
We don't have it.
We don't have it.
So-
Right, the wording
of
is
Oh,
used
sorry.
for those events.
Yeah, I don't think you could get 30 people in that current space.
In your
Okay,
historic
okay.
room,
Yeah.
what's.
So-
Alright.
How does it compare to the size of this room? Just for reference for everybody?
Similar, I mean, it's.
or could you show us the historic room that is being used as a community room right now? Because I was at an event 2 weeks ago in it, and there was definitely a lot of people there. But I think that room is 485 square feet. So again, I just want to make sure that we're not we're not making a space smaller and people are going to come in there and say, this is less functional than what we currently have. And I think that's the direction that this is going. So I'm just nervous.
The children, we don't have a lot of chairs set up, so a lot of the kids are sitting on the ground, and I think the community room are for like structured seating. I look at the, like, we're gonna have a children's program room where they can go in and sit, and I look at the community room as like a bonus space that we don't have right now. That would have a different function.
I think a bonus space is probably the best way to think about it. It's not just a room to have a presentation at, it's a room to have classes in. We're still carrying, folding tables that have their own storage space. So you can stack your 30 chairs up and then you can pull out a half a dozen tables to have a class at, or you could move all of that away and have kids sit in a circle for like a much larger story time or something like that. It's the loss here isn't entirely described by just losing 10 seats and the bit of a change presentation size. There's the loss to the rest of that isn't like the rest of the other programs that can be done in the community room. There's not really a loss to that, in all honesty, if that makes sense. Because you can still run all of that program there. You can still play video games with a much larger crowds versus in the teen lounge. So that community meeting room still holds up for every aspect of it, except there's just a few less seats in it. But it will still be able to open up to the outside, still be able to have kids in there, still be able to have overflow. It will still be a very nice space as well. And it will be acoustically isolated, which is different than the current meeting space. So you can have that operate separately from the rest of the library. You can still close it down at night so that people can come at night and have a meeting. So.
And I think, just to clarify one of Kat's questions, and I don't have, I know it's in a slide, but I don't know which one. The current historical room, what is the square footage of that?
488.
And what are you proposing the community meeting room for?
Right now, it's estimated at 420 on the new cut with the cutoff.
But by decreasing the community room is when we would then reduce the impervious area, correct? And then we would not have to do the stormwater retention.
Yeah, and there's additional value that's not calculated yet about like reducing the systems now that the building's a little smaller. Things like that too, which is a similar thinking to the impervious area where there is a trickle down effect to making things smaller.
What is the size of the children's program area then right now?
Yeah, I think you have to
Currently
combine
proposed.
that with the community room to give you the overall versus the historic presentation. I mean, you have to.
Well, and also just the practical aspect of like, if we're not gonna be using the community room for the kids programs because we have another space, then we're not looking apples to apples.
Right.
So in the kind of proof of concept plan on the right, well, you can see that we've only lost 25 square feet by recapturing some space from the double height areas and making some of our corners a little more uniform. So the children's program space is 30 feet smaller in this plan. You know, it could grow or shrink. So that's was done by recapturing. So there's not really a loss to the children's space. We reallocated that loss.
So I guess then, Tina, my question would be then for you is, I understand what you're saying, thank you. But this is 250 compared to 485 for this, in theory, the same types of programs. Do you feel like that's gonna be adequate? Like in my head, I was thinking they would be held in the community room because it was gonna be more similar sized. If that's not
So
the
you
case,
have to
then-
remember too, though, Chris's programs typically don't have as many as like summer reading kickoff, which is what I think Kat was at.
Okay.
She gets 20 people.
Yeah.
Sometimes she gets 5, sometimes she gets 30. So I think it is an adequate space.
Okay.
If there is a big event like summer reading, which sometimes we hold at a town park.
Yeah.
I think the community room would work, especially if the doors open and we can use the outdoor space.
Right.
That's my opinion.
Okay.
Is the plan still for the children's area, those two, so you don't have all the shelving on the reduced footprint, but those bookshelves that are right next to the children's programming space, the plan was to have them on wheels so they could be moved, correct? So if we needed more children's program space, those could just be moved out of the way, right? Didn't we talk about that at one
We can
point?
certainly do that, yeah.
So that whole area could be programming space if she had a larger event.
Because it's not a wall, it's just
It's
an
not a wall.
area. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, there's, not a wall. It's definitely flexible.
Is that the same? Can you go to the, do you have a lower level comparison? Yes. Is that the same or any of the, do you have the one of the larger, the collection? Yeah, one more back maybe. Yeah. So are any of the bookshelves in the collection space planned to be movable?
No, not
So those will all be stationary?
Yeah.
But anything in the children's or just that side where the,
Oh, we can discuss that further. Not, you're talking about cost of wheels there, so it's not a huge consideration currently. But yeah, it's great for providing flexibility. It's what we've done before. So we would definitely consider that, especially at that adjacent program space, whether you want to use the bookshelves to make a wall or whether you want to open them up, it could be really nice.
So then one other question, can you remind, with this new proposed floor plan or square footage, what is that total compared to what it is now? So how much increased space, if any, are we getting?
Do you know that off the top of your
You mean usable space?
Usable space from the existing library now to this new proposed reduced format footprint.
Well, so it's hard, the footprint is, so before this adjustment, the existing footprint was 52, or it's 5,200 square feet, and the proposed footprint, just the footprint was 4,700. But the usable space was more than the 52.
Okay, that's, you're
But
right.
I don't know
Usable
what it
space
is.
The right,
Yes, so I don't know what it is
What I'm
by
looking
taking
for.
off a couple hundred square feet, what the usable space is compared to the current footprint.
Yeah, I mean, since we captured the space in the children's library, it's really just the, what was lost in the community room and the break room, so
Okay.
200 square feet.
Okay, so
200,
it's-
250.
it's currently 5,200, is that what you said?
The footprint is 5,200 currently.
What's the current usable space?
Current as it exists now is like 7. Since you're
won't
writing it
quote you
down,
on
I don't know.
I won't
I want
quote
to
you
say
on it.
74, but I'm not positive at all that it's 7,400.
Okay, I'm gonna just use it as an estimate and I'll write approximate.
I think,
And
but
then
since
the
we're
new one is what?
unclear off the top of my head, but I think Audrey's pulling it up.
So
Yeah,
She's
I just
looking.
want to say, like, so it's not just that we're losing, like, so we're losing the square footage of that, but we also have lost a lot of square footage with some of these big mechanical issues that we've had to deal with, which I think is why you had the breakout room bumping out and things like that, the break room. So I think overall, I just want to make sure we have a good sense of like, okay, we've had to take all of these spaces for things like ramps, break room, the big fire suppressant. Like I just see square footage like flying out the door left and right, and it's making me really anxious because I just want to make sure the product that we have at the end of the day is delivering on the goals to make a better space for library users and for the community as a whole. Even those that don't use the library now, I want them to feel like this was an improvement for the town and that they want to come and be a part and use that community room for something that isn't necessarily library related, but it's an asset that they paid for with their taxes. So I just want to make sure that we are really looking at this critically. And again, if things like I said, like the skylights or the handicap ramp or other things have to go to, I just want to make sure we're accommodating the largest amount of people. And if it means that a break room has to be reformatted into a break room / workroom, I just want to make sure we're really critically looking at every single square footage of this building, like every foot. It counts. So I just want to make sure we're all like really critically looking at that and making the decisions based on the overall needs of the most people in the community.
Well, we have water pouring from the ceilings, paint falling from the ceilings, plaster falling from the walls right now. So in my opinion.
For sure. Absolutely.
understand
We need it, but I'm just saying, like, we have to pick and choose. We have to prioritize, and it sucks that what has to go is, I think, what most people will use in the town. That's just my opinion.
Right. I agree with that. But we have to prioritize in order to get the building built. Because it's a priority to get a renovated building, because the building that we have now, if this does not pass and I can't get the funding, we will have to close that building completely. We cannot continue to have staff in there with the exposure to the elements that's happening.
I totally agree with that, Denise. I'm not arguing with that in any way, shape, or form. I'm just saying, let's make sure that we're looking at how we're using the square footage. If we keep reducing it week to week, I want to make sure we're really critically looking at how we use each space.
Can you go to the large ground floor? Yeah.
So I'll just throw it out there, and I never give back space, because getting any mechanical space from an architect is like, no offense, Andrew. But with the change of mechanical systems and the change to the plumbing system, we really wouldn't have any boilers or heating elements or any HVAC equipment that I could think of in that mechanical space right now. We do have the fire protection, which is, I think, probably the room on the right above the janitor's closet. So we can evaluate, I didn't want to bring up the meeting, but since we're looking at every 10 square feet, I think we'd be able to get back some of that mechanical room space if that helps. like I said, we're doing localized hot water heaters at the bathrooms. We don't have any true plumbing systems down other than the service entrance. And so the driving force is gonna be the fire protection and the electrical.
Yeah.
So we can work in the next phase to get back some of that square footage. No, I understood, but every, if it's that critical, if we can get back 50 or 100 square feet, then it may help.
I mean, the different square footages is worth different things in different spaces. And in some ways, I think what you've done with the children's library makes that space more usable. Because there's fewer little corners and nooks and crannies and stuff. So making the space well proportioned is really important. And it's not like the building is $600 a square foot. If you slop 20 feet off, you're gonna save that exact same ratio. Because even just reducing this, you're just saving. And what are you saving? You're saving, it's mostly air, right? You're saving a little bit of the exterior facade, and there's a slight reduction in the load of the
So
the
we can
mechanical
get back-
equipment, so you get diminishing returns. So I think that the question is
we can get back 60
the
square feet
community
with
meeting
storage.
room really usable? Because this is gonna be a very
Into the
public
I'm sorry.
space, and is it gonna be usable on a regular basis? Because we're not designing the church for Easter Sunday for like, special reading day, it's like on a weekly basis. Because the room it's a little small in this room right now. This room is not efficiently laid out. No, that's right.
Sorry, you're just saying that the community room proposition 400 or whatever it is smaller than this.
I
This
mean,
room that we're in.
this room is 25 by 25 feet, which is about
Yeah.
570 feet, so it's a little bit smaller than this room. So just for scale.
Yep.
So
You
it's,
can count the ceiling tiles.
I'm
Yeah,
counting
it's
chairs,
good. Yeah,
20.
yeah.
there's 20
Yeah.
chairs here.
Yep.
So would seat 30 to 35 people.
Good.
So to look back at the community room, to add back square footage, to go back to the 540 or even 520, if there's a way to add, is there a way to offset that by still finding a way to reduce the stormwater areas? So are there other things that could be done in the exterior with the impervious, pervious, whatever, to make up for that difference? That we could put the square footage back and then have the savings on the other end, so the overall savings is still the same.
I'm sure.
Could we just answer the question first?
Hopefully, we'll focus on this.
I'd like him to answer my question first, Kathleen.
I can't guarantee it, but I'm sure that we can reduce or increase the permeable area of the landscape to ideally hit that. I mean, it would be more than 500 now. We'd be aiming for 700 square feet. I believe 700 square feet if we were to not remove that edge. But it's probably doable. It would be talking more than one of the courtyards, probably be talking more like two of those
And that's
material changed.
changing the materials of the stone.
Yeah.
And we don't know what the savings is.
And we don't know what the savings is. Yeah, there's a different construction to like what you lay those on. There's probably more gravel. It might be like a foot more gravel. I'm not sure off the top of my head. It could be more than that. It could be.
It has to take up the wall, right?
Yeah.
But if you reduce like the idea and look at it was reducing the width of the path going up to the historic
Yeah.
entrance, if you took, a foot off of a
Each
30-foot path, it's 30
Yeah.
feet, 2 feet 60, so it can add up.
Yeah, they can. So we can definitely look at it, especially if we think that there's a huge loss in cutting the footprint of the building. And we all agree on that, and we can look to finding those savings elsewhere. It might require a bit more of a radical solution elsewhere. That's all.
Can I ask
So
one more quick question? What if the skylights go? What's the cost savings on those two skylights in the roof?
There was only one skylight, and it was actually only $3,000.
Oh, okay. The two,
Um,
so the thing, I guess I don't know if I'm talking about a skylight then, like the pop-ups on the roof, that there's like two that pop up through the roof.
I don't have a cost on those. I can't imagine they're that much. We're gonna build them out of wood most likely. And then it's just the cost of a window.
Yeah, I think you're replacing double pane glass with a slate roof.
Yeah,
That would dramatically affect the design.
yeah, and it would,
Yeah.
Negative.
Actually costs more.
yeah, it would change everything that we built together.
But I understand what you're calling, Kat, of looking at, something superficial versus something functional.
Right.
I think what was coming down to is the community room functional. There's not, I mean, you've actually improved the plan in several ways to make things more efficient and better. Particularly around that circulation and keeping the ramp in, which I think is a good thing. So apart from just making the community room a little bigger, maybe it comes out of the reading area. I'm not sure what you can do.
Is there any room to be gained in the seating area? Like, can all of that shift down?
And you're trading.
So like the restrooms slide down to
Yeah.
make that in like by the door, that seating area.
Yeah, I mean, you could trade the space.
Yeah.
I mean, having the space being a little bit longer than wide is probably good for presentations versus totally square. It's
We'd be reluctant to reduce that seating area. It's quite tight already. We looked at reducing it from the left side, actually, just by a foot, and we weren't comfortable with it. So.
Did you want to say something? Yeah, yes, Captain Pavlik, 102 Bolton Road. I think this question that I think Kat has brought up is the size of the community room going to be sufficient? So the question is, how many people can comfortably sit in there for a presentation? And is that number sufficient for the type of programming that we anticipate having for adults and special events going forward?
Sunny.
Yeah, so I understand that there's a lot of concern regarding square footage. I guess my major concern is cost at this point still. And I was curious, I think Andrew was saying it can be done, but they're not really sure where they're going to make up that cost. And I was curious about, one, if we could potentially explore the HVAC again. I know that they made a recommendation, but if we really want the square footage, something has to give, because we can't just keep adding to the project at this point, in my opinion. And so we could look at that, but also, like, what's the implication of closing the upstairs entrance? Does that save a lot of money, or could we explore that again? Or basically just trying to come up with something that's in between. Like, if we're going to gain square footage back, what are we willing to give up in return, I suppose?
So we got $1 million from the Community Preservation Committee to restore the historical entrance. We close that money goes away. So there's $1 million less that we have to work with.
And also having that as an accessible entrance for paramedics allows you to have a smaller elevator. So there's functional purpose to it. And it's probably gonna be a primary entrance for a huge group of users coming from Hill Middle School.
We did get a number for that, if anybody is interested. I believe it was in the 115 to $120,000 range. So it's a big number, but with the funding sources specifically to open it, it's the offset's not even close.
Can you go back to the mechanical slide just to? The gas powered boiler, which would be the way to save it, is just not the right thing to do.
It's not.
Whether we're stretch code or not. I think the leap that we've made from the off the shelf to the VRF is that leap already made for mechanical to stretch it? And the compromise is the duration of the system, and the good thing about it is it's still all electric. So I think we've really maxed out what we can do with HVAC in terms of that options. The savings in that traditional, this is a non-starter. They don't even make those in 10 years.
We don't disagree.
So just
But you,
yeah.
you know. we
So
gotta
I think
focus
this decision is the right one to make. I really like the anything below grade. I mean, those things are killer. So what you do with the grade beams is great. What you're doing above with the roof is great. And getting rid of the storm water, I think, is essential. You just have to find a way to do it. I'm sure that the landscape architects can make it work and make it beautiful and make it worthwhile.
So I'd just maybe like to make a recommendation, just thinking about it right now, is maybe we, what if we carried the estimate as, or the square footage as proposed with the cut community room. And then if that number comes back fairly and equitably, we look to potentially extend that one wall of the community room a few feet to get another row in. And that's kind of where, that's the one that can move out into the, if necessary, when we get the new 50% estimate back, because that will have a minor effect on a few other things, but it's not a huge amount of space if we, I mean, I'm not saying we go all the way back to the 530, but maybe we get a bit farther with it.
So in theory, we could approve it as is with the caveat that we will change it if the estimate comes back reasonable. That's what the vote would be on, right? Am I understanding that correctly?
And that's what I'm thinking potentially.
Okay.
Yeah, at least to move
Forward.
move forward.
I think it could be that, and or if the savings from the stormwater offset the additional square footage.
Right, or we don't know what we're having to do with the septic yet. Right.
So for the septic, is that something we can vote on, or is that just something that's really just math?
Something that the Board of Health is gonna tell us what we have to do.
Okay, so it's not really
Yeah.
enough. It's gonna end up where it's gonna end up.
So I wanted to ask, and this is a slight diversion, I don't want to get into a whole thing, but do we know where we're at with fundraising to understand? Because again, I think what it comes down to is, I know we have to cut money, and I know that any community room is better than no community room and all of that, but to Kat's point, if we make it smaller now, you're not gonna make it bigger again, so we want to just make sure we're making the right decision, so where are we at? Do we know how much that is, or what our estimates are to offset? If we decided to say, no, we want to keep the 50, spend the 50,000, keep the room as is, do we know maybe where we're at with that?
So I can't answer that. However, any fundraising, it has to come off of what I'm cutting out of town budgets to pay for this. Like we can't add on top of that. Like the 2 point whatever million that I'm making up, then has to be decreased by fundraising, because I have to make sacrifices to every other budget to cover this extra money. So we can't keep adding on now to the money that we've decreased, if that makes sense. So I can say, if I have to,
less.
right, if I have to cover this in the budget, I have to cut every budget, we have to cut capital spending for the next 20 years to cover a bond for this. And I would do that because to me, this project is so important.
Right.
So in my mind, any fundraising has to decrease what I have to take out of the general fund budget, not on top of that.
Okay.
So we still need a number, a ceiling, that if no fundraising were to happen, no grants were to happen, nothing, I can cover, because that's what I have to say to town meeting.
Right.
That I need you to have faith in me that we can pay for this, and then I have to be able to pay for it. So anything needs to reduce that, because again, every department is gonna have to make a sacrifice to pay for this project.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
I have like one more comment / question. So again, I just want to just put one more thing out there. I don't know if this is possible, but again, I don't mean to be focusing on shelving. The only reason I am is just because I feel like you build the house and then you wait 10 years and then you get new furniture for it because you're broke because you built the house. At least that's in my house. But so I guess, again, because I see a number of $150,000 for new shelves, I'm wondering, can we say, okay, well, we need the 50 to 60,000 to keep the building larger. So then your shelving budget becomes $90,000. So you have to reuse some of the shelves that are existing, but not all of them. I guess I'm just wondering, is there flexibility there, just given the fact that that number is so large? And I feel like that's something that's a lot more tangible in the future, not necessarily in 3 years from now, but maybe in 5 or 7 years. You go back to the town and you say, we would like to update the shelving. We can't update the footprint of the building. It's just not possible, but you can update things like fixtures. So I just want to make sure that we're prioritizing, the footprint where we can.
Right, well, so two things, I think. The interior, the low end is to change the metal shelving. And then that's already 125,000. To reuse the existing shelving, it's only an additional $25,000 savings. Because it's going from 125,000 in savings to 150,000 in savings.
It's unclear what these columns of numbers mean, because there's no columns.
It's the high- I think it's the range of.
It's the high and the low.
Of the cost or the savings?
The savings.
Savings.
But
So you
like,
could,
line item 15 says change to metal perimeter library shelving, which is what was being recommended. So just to change to not do the millwork was gonna be $125,000 in savings. To reuse what we had, it was gonna instead be $150,000 savings.
So it's only an additional savings of 25,000.
Right.
Okay, all right, okay.
Right, and I understand your point that you can go back to the town, but again, if I'm paying for this for 20 years, I can't then do more furniture within that 20 years if we're already paying for the building, unless you're gonna go back to the taxpayers and ask for a debt exclusion to pay for these types of things.
yeah,
If
no,
I
but I
went-
think that those things are easier to fundraise for, to be quite honest as well. Like, that's what the library friends give each, like they love to give you furniture or like, those types of upgrades because it's tangible and people can see them. So I guess that's just my point, is that to me, I consider that a soft cost, and maybe that's just in my mind. But, so I guess what I'm saying is like, I'm reading it as if you had 0 new shelving, you would save $125,000. Am I reading that incorrectly?
Well, but we're saving 125,000 currently to change just to the metal shelving.
Ah, okay. So you're already saving 125,000 to go.
Yes.
Okay.
But so to just reuse, it's only an additional 25,000 to reuse what we have instead of buying new metal.
Gotcha. Okay.
Provided there's no investment in cleaning, painting, adjusting.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I think it might make sense to have there be the caveat in the vote, that this is an important thing that, I don't know, maybe a third or half the committee really cares about. And so in the effort to move forward, to be able to plan for the next zoning board, ZBA meeting and everything else, if we need to, because I assume we're supposed to be voting yes on this and moving it all forward. If we can do that with the caveat that septic, water drainage, the cost estimate, that this is something that in 2 weeks or whatever, we can revisit and say, is this something that we can extend again? Because it seems to be the only sticking point of all of the cuts that were made. This is the one that people care about the most.
Yeah.
So for the zoning board though, we
Yeah,
need the
that's-
building
that's the
footprint
hard part.
finalized by August 7th. So.
Are we
Yeah.
gonna have any of that information before?
We're not gonna have an estimate done until,
What about the
3
impervious
weeks
area?
after August 11th.
What about the stormwater? Will we have some of that information in the next few weeks?
Well, I'm gonna get a number on that
Okay.
as soon as possible, now that we have where we need to reduce it. So we're gonna try and work through that quickly this week.
And it's not
But-
possible, I mean, I know the zoning board is challenging, but it's not possible to present to them Plan A and Plan B.
Yeah, so we did that Monday. We gave them the sort of worst case scenario on the building footprint, knowing that it was gonna be reduced.
Okay.
And would there be a possibility of getting approval with your footprint or no?
So the bigger footprint of the community room, I would say yes. The fact that we were able to get rid of the bump out will be huge for the zoning board. They were very concerned about that because it's only a 2.5 foot from the property boundary. So I think, but the bigger footprint impacts stormwater, it impacts parking, it impacts other issues. So I think we could get it approved, but then if we were to reduce it, I don't know how they would, if they would look very favorably upon us then saying, oh, we changed our mind, we've made it a little smaller.
But wouldn't they
But that's a good
like
thing.
that?
It's a good thing, but it wouldn't be in their site plan approval. The
Right.
site plan would approve the footprint that we present that night. So, and in order for us to stay on target and have numbers and have a budget for town meeting, we need them to approve it on August 7th.
Andrew, can you go back to the slide that has like the things that aren't getting cut, like the one, like the green versus the white situation? I don't know. To me, it looks like there's $60,000 easily found in those other line items. But again, that's just my perspective. I think I'm misunderstanding this. So so say, for example, instead of reducing the square footage, we just got rid of, I don't know, 3.0 lighting reduction, low end, like, does that save us $60,000 additionally?
These aren't cumulative, you can't add them all up, some of them get
Ah,
to. So.
We're
like,
taking the high end of
Yeah.
the lighting reductions.
gotcha. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So the ones that are already there on the high end versus low end, those decisions have already been made.
Well, that's in the recommendation.
Right. Got it. Okay.
Lines
Yeah,
10, yeah. If you look at lines
When
10,
you're
11,
talking
and
about
12, those are those 3 mechanical slides that Peter showed. They're
Yep.
in that one. And you can only choose one of those, you can't.
Yeah.
And.
Yeah,
the
got it.
$1,000, it'd be less savings than the one we've chosen. So there's not necessarily, you can't add all the declined ones and get 60,000.
Yeah, we wish we could cut
It's
two
just
mechanical
confusing.
systems, but. Or,
You can open a few windows, some wood burn stoves.
I guess, I mean, we would be way more comfortable moving forward with a design with as a slightly smaller square footage, just because of kind of overall calculation numbers. It's hard to grasp that we'd be able to make these total reductions with a similar square footage. I know the numbers look like we could be close, but I think there's additional savings there with that smaller number, with that smaller square footage that we haven't calculated yet. Like some of these things that we're talking about, but that's just my comfort in the future, the rest of this design.
When you say smaller, you don't mean, you mean some number between the 500, and I'm just gonna talk community room, somewhere between the 540 and the whatever for
420.
something,
420.
but adding a little bit more potentially with some savings.
I'm saying 420 number is kind of where we'd like to design from. Then
But is there any possibility for landing somewhere in the middle of those numbers?
we could, yeah.
Because
And I
maybe
mean,
that's
can
a
also-
happy medium that we get a little bit more space. But we're still cutting some space and then hope we can have the plans to go to the zoning board. But if septic is 30,000 or something and that comes back, and if the drain water, whatever thing, we might. Who knows? Everything could have to be paid for and then it doubles, but it could work out that we covered the difference, or maybe it's only $40,000 that we'd be covering by extending the room instead of the 60.
Yeah, we can aim for a like 470 square foot number.
And that would be one more row, you think, or one more row
We
of
need,
seats?
we need to study what it would actually be. I'm kind of guessing right now, but we can say somewhere between 420 and 530, sorry.
I have a design, what's the barrier between the space outside the community room and the community room? Can you just, is it not just one big door you can open up.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
sliding
It is.
door.
So
No, he's
that would-
talking about the.
I'm not talking about outside,
Living
I'm
room
inside,
space.
where
Oh,
there's that
inside.
seating area that, whatever that was, that.
Yeah,
Those are solid walls, right?
Okay, so there's no way to extend the capability of the room by using the overflow right outside.
Okay, so Andrew, you think we could get somewhere between 530 and 425? That's still reducing the square footage, but maybe adding a little more than where we are right now.
yeah, I mean, I guess, if basically, if you all think we've cut a little too much from the community room, we can add a bit more back in, like 50 square feet. And see what that gets us and how that room lays out. And we can review that at our next workshop.
But when are you gonna go to the planning board?
The planning board is
Oh, we have one more meeting, yeah.
10 days after that.
That would be my proposal, and I can make a motion if you'd like. Our chair. Okay. Are we ready? Is there any more? You're supposed to ask that.
Go ahead, no, after the motion.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, then I will move to approve the one, where's the page? I'm using the right words.
I'm getting there,
The cuts that were made, the new plan proposal,
I'd say recommendations.
recommended changes to the budget cut, et cetera.
There, sorry, that was my fault.
Yes,
On those
okay,
words.
recommended
Yeah.
value management strategies. But with the exception of changing the community room to be slightly larger than currently recommended.
Do I have a second? Second. Is there any more discussion about it?
Do we want to make that pending savings in other areas? Provided savings in other areas can account for the additional adding back the square footage?
I think you have to, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that, if we don't know about those cost savings in time for the meeting?
But we might know some of them. We might know the stormwater. It's possible we'll hear about the septic. I mean, we might know some of them.
Yeah,
If
well,
someone feels strongly about that, then sure.
I feel strongly about that. We have to hit that number that we're gonna take to town meeting.
Okay.
And so we can't, it's great to talk about a bigger community room, but once again, if at town meeting they say no to Denise, we've got a building that's raining ants and rain, and that's what we live with.
Well, we live with $8 million worth of renovate, or whatever, $6 million worth of renovations, and that's it. Because that's what's approved, and we would have to live with what was approved last year. And then you're just doing the minimum.
Okay, then provided we get some cost savings in these other areas that we've been discussing. Maybe not the full amount, but a good faith effort towards meeting the difference. Still second. just say
Second.
Yeah, I mean, it affects interior and exterior. I would just have everyone vote.
Okay, we ready? Hey, Andrew,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Melissa,
Yes.
Kat,
Yes.
Yes.
Tina, yes. Denise,
Yes.
Aisha,
Yes.
Sunny.
I didn't hear her. What did you say?
Yes.
Marcy,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Morgan. Get everybody, Kat? I got
Yes.
Kat, right? Okay. So you take, that is a unanimous vote. Sorry about it.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So now we will go to John Colliers for some updates.
Just a quick update for the committee. So I want to bring to your attention the fact that we do plan to pre-qualify general contractors for this project. It's a way to sort of weed out those general contractors that might not have the capacity, the experience, the financial ability to complete the project as we want it. So it's not a requirement for a project of this size. We're estimating this to be under 10 million. We got close, but we're going in the right direction. So it's not a requirement, but we are advising to do it. So in order to do so, there's a series of steps. One of them is we have to advertise a request for qualifications for contractors for the project. That's a document that we'll be putting together for you. Another step is that we are going to form a pre-qualification committee. It's a body of 4 people. One of them will be the OPM, another will be a representative from the Design Lab, and then we would ask 2 members of the building committee to participate in that. Colliers would be doing the majority of the work of the review of the qualifications that contractors submit, but we do ask that a couple of members of the committee do participate. So I'm not asking for volunteers tonight, but just to kind of put on your radar for the next meeting, I think I would like to take a vote to form that subcommittee, that pre-qualification subcommittee. So it's a process of receiving the qualifications that they submit. We review them, make sure that they're up to the task, and then we invite them to bid on the project. They can't bid unless they're pre-qualified. So
What's the time frame for that, those decisions? So if people are considering their availability to volunteer.
yeah, so once we form the pre-qual committee, we'll meet probably like a week or 2 after. We'll review the quals package, and then within about a month, we'll finish the reviews.
So August, September?
Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
I'll volunteer for that now. If you need names.
Yeah, you got it.
Well, I mean, you
We're
can
not
throw out a
gonna-
name, but you can't vote because that's not on the agenda.
Yeah, well,
So that'll be added to the next, next
Yeah.
2 weeks from now.
and that's it. That's keep it brief. That's
Okay.
all I have.
Can I ask a question just about that in general? Do you have thoughts about what contractors you hope will come forward that are available that could do this project?
Yeah, I do. I have some thoughts for sure. Yeah, some that specialize in this kind of work. One of them did the project down the street in Bolton. We're working with them right now on another project actually about to kick off. But there's a bunch that we typically see on projects of this scale. We hope they all at least try to pre-qualify. And then we'll see if they submit a bid. But pre-qualifying is one way to sort of get the word out because it's a public advertisement. So
And what if you have a very low number of contractors that want to qualify?
if we have a really low number of, well, we could re-pre-qualify, I suppose, if we're not happy with what we have. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I expect to get a pretty good number of at least quals packages, and then we'll see who actually bids on the project. If we get 1 or 2 bidders or 3 bidders, that wouldn't be unusual based on what we're seeing out there right now. It's really busy. Everybody's at capacity, unfortunately. We'll see if anything changes in the next couple of months, but I do expect to get a good amount of at least quals packages.
So the next is to approve the Colliers invoice for services through June 30th, 2023 in the amount of $8,364.38.
Oh, so moved. You took my motion.
Oh, sorry.
So moved.
Okay.
I have to call for a second.
Oh, sorry. Second.
Frank.
Did Frank, okay, thank you. That's what I thought.
I'll go around for everybody or just the,
Okay, just the
Tina.
building committee.
Yes, Frank,
Yes.
Denise,
Yes.
Aisha,
Yep.
Kat,
Yes.
Marcy,
Yes.
Sunny. Sunny,
Oh, yes.
thank you. That was a unanimous vote.
Can I ask a question about the minutes, Lisa?
Yes, you may.
Why is there a highlighted word?
I noticed that, but I will submit it without that.
Okay,
highlight.
so that wasn't like a questionable
No.
item, okay. I move that the minutes of the joint library building committee 2.0 and exterior design committee minutes from June 28th, 2023 be approved.
Second.
Once more with gusto, Tina.
Yes.
I know. Denise.
Yes.
Tina, yes. Morgan.
Yes.
Lisa.
Yes.
Frank.
Yes.
Kat.
Yes.
Marcy.
Yes.
Me,
Yes.
Aisha.
Yes.
Andrew.
Yes.
Melissa. Yes. Richard.
Yes.
Thank you. That was unanimous.
Did you want
Is
to
there
bring up?
anything else?
I do.
Go ahead.
So Sunny mentioned this, I think, a little bit, and I want to revisit it. I know when we first met with Colliers, we asked about trying to have like a TLDR update monthly to share with the town. I appreciate the reminder that Facebook is not real. But I still think that there should be something that we can share. Your progress reports are great when we go over them together here. That's not something that we can reasonably expect the community to read. So I'm wondering if we could get like I'm gonna say monthly, I won't hold you to it, but some type of cadence that we can, like 3 sentences. We saved $820,000 tonight, something like that, that we can post on the project page of the website. And then anytime anyone gets feisty on Facebook, I can copy and paste that and say, here you go. And then if someone wants to do that on Nextdoor, or someone wants to do that for the Independent, we're all referring back to the same piece of information. So I would like that if possible, please.
Let's do it. That's
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah.
So how do we decide who is the responding party in this situation? So this has been my question about all the stuff that pops up on Facebook. Sometimes it's better to just let people shout into the wind than to promulgate an argument on Facebook. And
So what if we just did something like, and I'm happy to be the person to do this, every time it gets posted, I'll just do a new post, not responding to anybody, or the library trustees can do it, or, the library, Facebook, whoever can do it, and just say, update from the latest building committee, information can be found here. And that way we're not responding to, or, shouting at people that aren't gonna listen, but we can do it as a, hey, everybody, not just loudmouths, look what we're doing, here is an update.
I know you might be just inviting people to
Yeah,
comment.
unless you disable comments.
I'm happy to do that.
Like Rod.
I think
That's fine.
I think the better approach with posting is just putting the link to the project page.
Right, no
Instead of saying,
commentary.
here's an update, just here's a link to the project page with all the information. I mean, at some
Yeah.
point, someone can scroll down the page and say, oh, here's an update.
Yeah.
Because I think if you start, what I wouldn't want to see happen is, someone misses a month or someone misses posting and then people like, well, you didn't post that to Facebook.
Right.
So I think, and I would say that to anybody, if you really want to comment on a post on Facebook, post the link to the project page.
Yep.
No words, just post the link to the page and everything would be there.
Yep.
Because I think as soon as you start, again, it's the naysayers that just want to fight. So trying to keep everyone directed to the page by not just copying and pasting, but literally giving them the link to the page.
Yeah, agree. And I feel like I looked at this and I was a little confused on the town website, the project page and the building committee, those are all like different pages, right? Or is all the information on one
All the
page?
information is on the library building committee project page.
Okay.
All right, and it can be found from the library building committee 2.0 page. It can be found from the exterior design committee
Great,
page.
great.
And it has its own page.
So that's the
So
one that we
people
wanna
can
have
sign,
the
and that's
update
why I have read it, people can sign up
to get those.
to get those. And every time I post information, I post a little news and notice that says, updates have been made to the page.
Yep.
So whoever signs up, and we have added, I don't know what it is off the top of my head, we maybe up to 20 people that had signed up for updates.
Okay.
And they'll get a little text message or an email, and they go on and see what's posted.
Okay.
And everything is the minutes, the invoices, the monthly progress reports, the presentations, the links to the videos. It is all there in a chart.
Right, but maybe on the main page or something, we can have this little mini update and then
That is-
everything can say
That is the main page.
full, or, well, because everything is like a link, right, to the
Yeah.
agenda, to the minutes, to the Colliers. So can on the body of the page, we have June update, 2 sentences, see minutes, agenda, blah, blah, whatever. So that people are not having to, I like to make these as easy as possible for
Well-
anybody who wants to click on a link.
But I guess I'm not following, because
That's-
well, I just I'll pull it up, because I
Later.
just, I mean, to me, it's fairly straightforward of
Yeah, and
what's
that's-
out there.
That's fine, I just think, and I think I'm happy to be the person to paste the link every time it's up without comment. I think it's just, I'm willing to risk receiving negative comments at the, but for putting it at the risk of like wanting to, I'd rather have people have more information and get the people that want to mouth off about it, they're gonna do it anyway. But at least if there's any concerned citizens who might be thinking, is this person crazy or real? And they click on it, they'll at least have the information in hand.
Right, so this is what's on the page now. So
Okay.
it has a little blurb, it has a link to both committee pages, has the link to subscribe, and then literally every meeting, here's all, everything is right here.
Okay, so on
Um,
that little thing on the side of each one, we can say basic updates. or
Yeah, so
something like
that's,
that.
right,
Yeah,
so that's what we
yeah.
have. Thank you, Peter. So Collier's progress report, the presentations, so it's all here broken down. So yes, if someone just wants to see the update, they can just click on the update.
Right, that's what I'm
Yes,
looking for, because I
yes.
think that this is a little much for people who aren't really involved, but to be able to say,
Yeah, those are more
this is-
technical documents. for
right,
sure.
just
Those
a
aren't
little
really-
brief thing would be
right,
great.
right.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, so I
awesome,
can
thank
put
you.
it its own item
Great.
and label it and then put it down, when I put the update, I can send, I could do, so when I do the updates, there's no, it's just a heading, there's
Yeah.
nothing with it, just people get the little notice saying, hey, there's an update. And they know to go to the page, so I could, if that's a standalone item, I could make the update. Monthly,
Great.
whatever, OPM report or something.
Yep.
So that people know to go there, but I don't wanna start posting things in other areas.
No, I understand that completely, right, I just want people to be able to have something easy to read and
Yes.
understand that isn't convoluted or too much. I don't know,
Yes.
building speak.
Would it be possible to also update the link from the Randall Library page to go here? Because right now it takes you to the old building committee page.
From which library, but the new website that we don't control, or the one that,
I don't know. which
No, the
one.
new one isn't up yet, so
okay.
just.
From the
talking about
town's,
town
the town's
page or on
Randall
the
Library
town?
Okay.
page, takes
Yeah,
you to
okay,
the
yeah.
old committee.
Yes, I can look at that, I don't wanna keep everyone for that, so,
It's just the link all the way at the bottom of the page that says building committee.
oh, okay, yep,
Thank you.
I can take care of that.
And Andrew, for next meeting, can you come with the square footage number, please?
Oh, yeah,
Thank you.
definitely, yeah. Meetings.
Monday, September 18th.
That seems so far.
The Saturdays in September are the Jewish holidays. So we are going back to a Monday night for the special town
I
meeting.
mean, maybe people will like that more.
This will be a good time. to start that. Garbage.
People don't like it no matter what night it is.
I know. Motion to adjourn at 8:43.
Second.
It's 2:43 in Paris, people.
Motion to adjourn 2:43. What is your, what time zone that is?
6 hours ahead of you all.
I appreciate you being on.
Yeah,
Kat.
thank you,
I
Kat.
think so.
No worries. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for finding a